Hello, people of the internet. My name is Colton Steiner, and welcome to the Siesta Podcast. Hopefully everyone had a good week, and me personally, I got a 3060, so I'm really excited for live streaming, editing, and stuff like that. But let's jump into today's topics. I will be ranking the 9 movies of Star Wars. Now, I'm just going to be listing the 9 movies. That's it. I'm not going to be incorporating Rogue One or Solo. Those are great movies, but I'm leaving them out of this list only because I want to focus on the Skywalker Saga. And while Rogue One and Solo kind of are key elements to Star Wars canon, I thought I'd just leave them out for this episode. While I do enjoy those movies, they're not going to make this list, so just want to get that out of the way right out of the gate. And first off, these are just my opinions on the movies. I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best, and this is how I see the Star Wars saga of the Skywalker Saga. And so I'm not right, I'm not wrong. This is just my opinion, and you have a right to like or hate whatever movies you want, and these are what my thoughts are going to be. So let's start off at the very bottom of the list, and I think everyone kind of has an idea of where, if you know me, you know where I'm going to go. And starting at number 9, I have The Last Jedi. Now, I'm also going to be ranking these on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm putting The Last Jedi at 4 out of 10, and honestly, I could go lower, and the highest I would go is maybe 5. I think I put it at 5, but then I put it down to 4 because that felt more accurate in my opinion, but y'all know I have issues with it. I mean, I've probably watched it like 5 times, and each time I watch it, it feels unnecessary to watch it again. I just can't watch it anymore because the more I watch it, the more I hate it. And like, there's good parts of the movies, don't get me wrong. The throne room scene is great. The Holden maneuver, the cinematically is beautiful. But aside from those 2 things, most of it I did not enjoy that much. First off, the storyline didn't work for me. The Canto Bight scene is by far my least favorite Star Wars scene in all of Star Wars. It's horrible. It's useless. It doesn't add anything. And the fact that Maz said, go to this one place where you can find this one code cracker. He's the only guy that can do it. And then they find another guy there that can do it. And it just didn't work for me. It was kind of pointless. Also, Holdo not telling anyone the plan and pretty much saying, okay, we're just going to sit here and do nothing and just assume nobody's gonna try and do something. You're a freaking rebellion. You're the resistance. Like, someone wants to do something, they're gonna fight to save their lives. So the fact of the matter, that was one of the biggest problems I had with the movie. I know people say, oh, it's in a army base, you just ride with your general's plans, but they didn't say any plans. They just said, just follow my orders, and then she didn't say anything. There was no action to move forward to beat the First Order, and they blew up the ship, which goes to my next complaint about this movie. If there was a mole that many of Star Wars fans are thinking there might have been, why don't you tell us? There was literally no reason for her not to tell Poe the plan. Like, here's what we're gonna do. He doesn't go off, none of the bad things happen, none of their ships get destroyed, none of the escape pods get destroyed, and they live to fight another day. And another thing I want to talk about is, how did Phasma survive in The Force Awakens when she was put in a trash compactor and Starkiller Base blew up? Like, nobody addressed that. It was just, okay, she survived. And that's my biggest complaint. It's all like, okay, this happened. We didn't say how it happened. It just kind of did. And going on to one of the biggest complaints, I know, okay, all these things are big complaints for me. That's why I'm complaining about it. But Luke ditching his old arc from the original series really hit a bad nerve with me. I mean, he saw the light in Darth Vader, one of the most menacing villains in all of film history, and he didn't want to strike him down, even though he could have, and he knew there was good in him. And then you go into this one where he's talking about Kylo Ren. All of a sudden he sees the darkness in his nephew and he wants to kill him. It makes no sense to his character. And I understand, like, there is a little bit of worry in the fact that, okay, I don't want him to turn to the dark side, but dude, the fact that you could turn Darth Vader over to the good side, I think you can help your mentor your nephew. Like, you didn't have to kill him, and that's what the biggest problem I have with that is they ruined the character of Luke Skywalker. And whenever I look at this movie in itself ruined so much about the sequels. And starting off with killing Snoke. I mean, it didn't make any sense. He's a big bad. He's such a big and powerful Force Sith user, and you just kill him off in the second movie. And then whoever directs the third movie is kind of set up for failure. Like, Kylo Ren, he's a misguided youth. He's a misguided Force user, a Jedi. Like, Ben Solo was gonna get killed by Luke. Like, it just all doesn't make sense to me, and it's one of the reasons why this movie is at number 9, and it will forever be at number 9 in the scope of the 9 Star Wars movies in the Skywalker Saga. But moving on from The Last Jedi, we are going to Attack of the Clones at the number 8 spot, and I'm ranking this one on a 6 out of 10 scale, and this is my least favorite of the sequels, but it definitely builds the story death of Darth Vader and Anakin Skywalker. And I guess the biggest reason why this one is at number 8 is because it just kind of bored me at times. I mean, the whole relationship between Anakin and Padme, I knew they had to go that route, but it just didn't fit with me. It didn't mesh with my personality, I guess. And the relationship went from 0 to 100 really quick. Like, at the very beginning, they barely know each other because it's been 10 years since they've seen each other. And then by the end of the movie, they're getting married. Like, I knew it had to happen, but it happened way too fast and it felt so odd. In the pacing of the movie, in some scenes, like where they're having dinner, they're joking, then all of a sudden it turns to a very serious scene. Like, we can't have this happen. Like, it just feels so awkward. It felt like there needed to be another scene in there before they went to such a serious scene. But some of the lines in the movies felt kind of cringy, but then again, it may be one of Anakin's quirks from growing up in an unnatural way compared to the other Jedi. Like, unlike the other Jedi, he was grown to love his mother. He was grown to have friends outside of the Jedi Order, and that's why this whole thing, well, he's too old. I mean, this is why they generally try and teach kids when they grow up why it's important not to have relationships, so you aren't persuaded out of fear and anger to turn to the dark side. And while the Jedi Council made a very good argument for this, they really didn't help him. And I talk about that more going into the third one. And you see his immaturity and how he feels he deserves more attention, because they keep saying, and most of the time around him, is he not the chosen one? Like, he has such this high level to live up to as being the chosen one. And yet, at the same time, they're not giving him the ability to branch out and be the Jedi that we all know that he could be. And that's kind of where the unnatural way of him growing up comes in, and where he grew up and was encouraged to show emotion. And we see this in the Sand People scene where he strikes all those Sand People down and kills all the women, the children, the men. You see this dark side come out of him, and that's where he truly feels powerful. And this is where the dark side starts to come into play. And Yoda feels it when Anakin's doing his thing to the Sand People. Yoda feels that. And this is where I think Yoda is partially to blame. And he knows the pain Anakin's going through, but nobody is there to help him. They're just here to say, as a Jedi, you need to go past this way of feeling, this emotion, and you need to learn to deal with death. Well, the problem is, he grew up in an unnatural way, and they try to use normal Jedi training, and we all saw that it just didn't work out. But yeah, this one is at number 8, and it's an enjoyable movie, does kind of bore me, which is why it's at number 8, but following it up is at number 7 is The Force Awakens, and coincidentally, it's at number 7, and I rank it 7 out of 10. And I don't hate this movie, but it really doesn't bring me anything new. This whole aspect of the sequel trilogy was, okay, new things, new Jedi, a new story. And it's literally like A New Hope with some minor tweaks. Here, I'm gonna list off the similarities between the two movies. First off, They have plans of a Death Star in a droid with BB-8 and R2-D2. Then the droid finds a lonesome person on a sandy planet, Luke Skywalker and Rey, and then the person works to get the plans to who they belong to. Well, I know they weren't plans, it was a map to Luke Skywalker in The Force Awakens, but still, I mean, it kind of has the same aspect of trying to get some sort of plans to the rebellion or resistance or whatever they're being called, and it just felt repetitive to me. Then you can also make the comparison that Han Solo and Rey had the same kind of mentor development that Luke and Obi-Wan had in the original. So there's another core aspect that you saw, and then each person saw their mentor die at the hands of the bad guy wearing a dark mask, as in Kylo Ren wanted to be a Darth Vader, and then Darth Vader killing Obi-Wan, where Kylo Ren killed Han Solo, Darth Vader killed Obi-Wan. So there are more comparisons there. And then they go to the Death Star, they blow it up, similar to the original. And yeah, it's very similar in movies, and that's why I have it so far down the list, because it just didn't feel like a proper sequel to the original trilogy. And it just kind of felt, oh, here, everyone wants to see a Star Wars movie, let's throw one at them. Let's have the exact same story that the original had and give them what the people want. And people really liked it. I mean, a lot of people say this is better than A New Hope, and the problem I have with that is A New Hope was an original movie. Like, they didn't plan for a sequel right at the gate. They didn't even know how well it was going to do. And all of a sudden, everyone loved A New Hope. Well, it was called Star Wars at the time, and then they made Empire Strikes Back, and then they made Return of the Jedi, and it started the franchise. But this one, it just kind of felt weak and kind of felt lazy. And it started some questions like, one, who is Rey's parents? And two, where did Maz get the lightsaber, which they never answered? Like, this whole aspect, oh, I got this, I'll tell you at a later time. They literally never answered it in all three of those movies, and they started it with really good potential. Like, for example, the Stormtrooper twist was great, where you have Finn, FN2187, who doesn't feel right about what they're doing, and he switches sides. That was brilliant. I wish they would have gone more into that, and they kind of did in The Rise of Skywalker, but this is another reason why I hate The Last Jedi. They didn't address that at all, and Finn was just kind of another character in that movie that really didn't provide any significant plot to that story in The Last Jedi. I need to stop ranting on The Last Jedi and continue with The Force Awakens. I'm sorry, but still, the Stormtrooper twist was great in this movie, and the fact that he saved Poe, great relationship between the two, and I honestly would have liked to see them work more stuff out between them in the future movies, because it's a great duo. It's a great duo between him and Poe. But yeah, this one, I'll give a solid 7 out of 10. Nothing original about it. I mean, a couple good twists here and there, but nothing that would outshine the next 6 movies on the list. Coming in at number 6 and rated on a scale of 7.2 out of 10 is The Rise of Skywalker. Now, this is the best one from the sequels, in my opinion, because it has a whole new story that works, and it doesn't feel rehashed. It feels original. It feels they added some twists in there that hadn't been done before, and the fact of the matter that I actually enjoyed the action. The acting was great. Adam Driver did a phenomenal job as Kylo Ren and Ben Solo, and then, as always, Daisy Ridley did a fantastic job as Rey too. But they have the core main characters together on a quest, and Poe's on the quest. You see a little bit more of his backstory too, and then Finn's on that quest as well, Rey, and then also C-3PO, R2-D2, and then Lando makes an appearance. I mean, this movie was great in my opinion, had a lot of nostalgic feel to it too, and the Emperor being back was kind of stupid, but killing off Snoke in The Last Jedi didn't help either, and this movie really kind of worked to fix what happened in The Last Jedi. And this is where you have two directors who had two completely different ideas for where the Star Wars would go. And I said this in my review in the very first episode when I talked about The Last Jedi. And what I really complained about was I didn't feel like these directors worked together to figure out where to go with the story. And it kind of just felt forced in there. And I really wonder what happened if J.J. Abrams would have directed all three movies instead of the first one and the third one, instead of having Rian Johnson direct episode 8 with The Last Jedi. But moving on from that, Adam Driver, as I said, nailed his part as Kylo Ren. You can finally see Ben is still in there. And when he's having that talk with Han Solo, and he's not a Force ghost, but you see him, I think it's a mental message that you still have time to turn to the light side. And when he chucks that lightsaber into the ocean, oh, that was so satisfying, man. So satisfying. And the final battle between Ben and Rey versus Palpatine and the Knights of Ren was spectacular. I loved that. It was so cool when Rey puts that lightsaber behind her head and then brings it up and it disappears. And then you see Ben Solo hold it in his hand, take out all the Knights of Ren. How epic was that? I loved it so much. And we needed more of the Knights of Ren in these movies. I wish they would have incorporated him more in the previous two movies. I think it would have been a fun aspect to see. We see him a little bit in The Rise of Skywalker, but not near as much as I would have wanted him. But they were pretty badass, but underused. And I really like this movie and the fact that they fixed Luke's character. And you heard me complain about what I didn't like about what they did to him in The Last Jedi. And they fixed him and made him into the mentor that I really wanted him to be in the previous movie. And they also revealed that Palpatine was Rey's grandfather, I think. And it was kind of underwhelming because this whole aspect of who is Rey's parents is like, okay, it just kind of gets, we never know. And then they tell us and it's like, okay, that's wasn't that satisfying, honestly. I honestly would have been more satisfied if it was Luke or maybe even Obi-Wan Kenobi. I think it would have been more so on the lines of the Force inside her and her connection to Anakin's lightsaber in some way. I think it would have made more sense, but still, it was satisfying to see her go through some sort of struggle, some sort of pull to the dark side, and then work her way back into being the good Jedi that we know and that we have seen from her in the last two movies. But still, I rate that movie on a scale of 7.2 out of 10 for The Rise of Skywalker. And moving on from that is The Phantom Menace. Yes, I have The Phantom Menace this high. A lot of people have, I would say, The Phantom Menace near the bottom of their list, but this may be my most controversial opinion, but I really, really like this movie. I mean, you have Jar Jar he kind of forces it to have a bad rep, but if you ignore that side of it and some of the politics too, it's really entertaining. I give this movie a 7.5 out of 10 because it has some of the most iconic scenes from Star Wars in this movie. First off, you got the Duel of the Fates, one of the best fights in all of Star Wars. You have the introduction of Darth Maul, and while he's only in one movie, he adds so much more to this movie, even though he barely even talks. Just his presence is menacing, and he brings up that same sort of feel that Darth Vader brings in the original series. And with a double-bladed lightsaber, we've never seen something like that before, and it's so cool, the aspect of it and how he uses it. So I loved watching him in the Duel of the Fates. And when I was talking about the politics earlier, and I still don't fully understand what the point of the trade routes were and the Trade Federation and why it was forced into the prequels, but I think if they would have gone another way, I think this movie might have been more well received from the audience. And I think pod racing really helped with that. It was a really cool aspect in this movie that I think pretty much everyone enjoyed. It was so cool to see these high, fast, intense races that we've never seen in a Star Wars movie before. And Anakin, you really get to see how good of a pilot he actually is, first in the pod racing, and then at the end when he helps blow up those Trade Federation ships. And this is where this movie is actually very crucial in the development of Anakin as a Jedi. And that's when Qui-Gon Jinn is killed. And he was an amazing character, and the only character I think that could have trained Anakin. Because him and Anakin had a very special bond, and in the little time they had together, nobody really understood how to handle Anakin Skywalker, how to take on this kid that may or may not be the chosen one. And with Qui-Gon Jinn, he defied the Jedi Council several times. He didn't obey what they said. He's like, you know what? I know this kid is the chosen one. I'm going to train him no matter what. I can't train him, but I want him to keep an eye out of what I do and take in all the new information I can. And Qui-Gon Jinn, he needed to die in order for the Sith to rule, in order to manipulate Anakin. And if he didn't die, Anakin doesn't turn the dark side. I'm very confident in that aspect. I think he would have, I think he still would have fallen in love with Padme. I think he could have probably saved his mother. I think Qui-Gon really would have helped him, mentor him on how to handle loss. And the death of Qui-Gon was just a big stepping stone for the Sith. If he doesn't die when he's facing Darth Maul, the entire series is different. I guarantee that. But there was a lot more entertaining aspects of this movie than what the public opinion gives. I mean, you had the pod racing, like I said, Duel of the Fates, Darth Maul. You see how good of a pilot Anakin was, and the entire battle situations, those were fun to watch. And Padme, you see more, she's more of a hands-on role in this, even though I believe she's only like 14 or 15 in this movie. I mean, that's what they portray her as, and still it's entertaining. I like it. You take out the Jar Jar aspects. Maybe if they would have gone the Darth Jar Jar route, maybe that actually would have made sense if they did that in the sequels, but it's kind of ridiculous. But still, I like this movie, gave it a 7.5 out of 10. So moving on from that one, we're going to the OG, A New Hope. A New Hope is ranked 7.8 out of 10 on my scale, and it's the OG. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. It was a big step forward in the world of film, and it was a stepping stone for CGI. I mean, as an original movie, it is insane how well the writing was, the acting was, and the effects were for this movie's time, and nobody ever saw anything like it before. And George Lucas and Lucasfilm were able to create a new franchise that billions and billions of dollars it will make in the future. But little did they know that this was just a standalone film at this time. And George Lucas created the Star Wars series, and when they cast Alec Guinness as Obi-Wan, Mark Hamill as Luke, Harrison Ford as Han, and Carrie Fisher as Leia. I mean, what a great casting they did, and I don't think anyone could replace these characters. I'm trying to think who they would have replaced them with, and no real actor or actresses come to mind that I think could replace them, because they were perfect for those roles. And it also introduced Darth Vader, one of the best villains of all time. I mean, you have James Earl Jones who has such an iconic voice. You hear his voice and you instantly know who that is. And in The Sandlot, when you saw him revealed at the very end of that movie, it was like, oh wait, that's Darth Vader. Nope, it's James Earl Jones, because that, like I said, his voice is iconic. And with Darth Vader, it's such a menacing character, and you don't want to go head to head with him. And I don't think before the 1980s, this movie was made in 1977, I don't think there was a single character who was as near as menacing as Darth Vader in the world of film. And George Lucas made him into the icon that he is. But also, going on the other side with Princess Leia, you go from such a menacing villain to Princess Leia, who is such a badass. Like, I mean, this is what I want a lot of current movies to take note of. And you can make strong female characters without forcing it. Princess Leia didn't take orders from anybody. And you saw that when Luke and Han came to rescue her. You take the word princess and you're like, okay, she's going to be all prissy and she's doesn't know how to handle herself. No, she freaking fires at stormtroopers and knows how to handle a gun and how to defend herself. Like, that's a strong female character. And this was in 1977. And the fact that a lot of movies nowadays feel forced to do that, I think just ruins a movie. You can make strong female characters without forcing it, and Star Wars A New Hope really proves that. Something I also really liked about this movie was it was a very simple premise, but it is done so well, and the pacing of the movie is very good, and it deserves to be at this spot at number 4. And it also allowed the creators an opportunity to open doors to so many stories in the world of Star Wars. So at the very beginning, you created this backstory of Darth Vader where he was a pupil of Obi-Wan's, and that's where you get the whole story of Anakin Skywalker and how he's related to Luke. You keep that door open, and it was just very smart how they wrote this movie. And it's at number 4 because I felt that the action was on point, but I felt like the movies above it were just better. And I really like this movie, and that's why it's a 7.8 out of 10 in my opinion. But moving on from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back at number 3. And I rate this movie 8 out of 10. And this is pretty much everyone's favorite movie of all time, or one of them if you're trying to rank them in all of Star Wars. And it has one of the most iconic lines in all of film history, with Darth Vader revealing that he is Luke's father. And this is something I really wish I would have been able to experience back in the day when it was originally released. Because when I did watch Empire Strikes Back, I knew what the reveal was. But unfortunately, I didn't get to experience it like they did in the theaters. So that is something that I always wish I would have to experience, and something whenever I have kids, that's something I hope they get to experience for the first time as well. But you see as they start out on Hoth that Luke is slowly becoming a Jedi and starting to really bring into balance with the Force, and he's starting to feel the Force through him. And that's where Obi-Wan tells him to go to the Dagobah system to train with Yoda, and that's where Yoda is introduced when he goes to Dagobah. And honestly, I love how he is portrayed. Like, Luke thinks he's kind of like a kooky, deserted old hermit, I guess, and he is nothing like the Jedi Master he was told to find. So he's definitely a great mentor to Luke, and he's just a great trainer. I mean, you look at all the previous movies, you've never really seen him train a Jedi before. And this is the second movie in the chronological release where we actually get to see Yoda train a Jedi and how he goes about doing that. And like his father, Luke is a little too arrogant to face Darth Vader with very little training. And when he thinks he's going to end up saving his friends up having to go back and save him. I mean, if Luke doesn't go and face Vader, he doesn't lose a hand, and Leia and Lando and C-3PO, Chewie, and R2-D2, they all get out of there safely. I mean, he really didn't have to go there. But for the first time in like so many movies, you never really see the bad guys win. And in this one, Han is in carbonite, and as the title states, the Empire did in fact strike back, and the rebellion took a lot of losses in this movie. So this was a good movie because it pretty much proved that the good side won't always win, but that's okay. You can live to fight another day. And that's where we go in from my third favorite movie to the second. And at number 2, ranking 8.4 out of 10, is Revenge of the Sith. And yo, the action in this movie is the best in all of Star Wars, in my opinion. And this movie really shows you that the Jedi Council had every opportunity to help Anakin, but they kept pushing him away. And when you look at his bond with Palpatine and his displeasure with the Council, and that's a good reason why he turned to the dark side. Palpatine gave him as the advice that he wanted to hear, and the Jedi Council just continue to leave him in the dust. And it really irks me whenever I see the Jedi Council kind of just hesitate to give Anakin any opportunity to prove himself, because they're just worried that he is not the chosen one, and they're kind of holding him back, and they're not using him to the potential that he knows he's capable of. And while he does a lot of maturity growing from Attack of the Clones to this one, they still treat him like a kid. And while he's deserves the rank of master, they say, no, we don't trust you yet. Like, when they're continuing to put their distrust in you, and that you have Palpatine who's continuing to say you have the right to be on the Jedi Council and be a master, I can understand where Anakin would go that route, that with them not putting their faith in him. And Obi-Wan tries his very best to keep Anakin's confidence up that you will be a master here soon. Trust me, it will happen. But Anakin, with everything's going on in his life, Palpatine was able to manipulate him, and he was a perfect person to manipulate. So as much as I want to complain about the Jedi Council pretty much forcing Anakin to the dark side, Anakin obviously made those decisions on his own. It wasn't fully on the Jedi Council, but Anakin definitely matured from Attack of the Clones, like I said, and he's a much better Jedi. He's not near as hot-headed, while at the beginning he isn't nearly as hot-headed, because you see when he's facing Count Dooku, he knows he shouldn't have killed him, but that's definitely something he would have wanted to do in Attack of the Clones because of all the Jedi that he killed in that movie. And it really makes you think that if Qui-Gon Jinn was his master, he wouldn't have turned to the dark side. So that is why this is one of my favorite movies of this franchise. And also, one of the reasons is because the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan is my favorite duel by far in all of Star Wars. The fight choreography is amazing, and it is so fun to watch. And it blows my mind that these two actors were able to do this, and they worked so hard to do it. I remember watching the behind the scenes of them training and trying to get this choreography right. And it wasn't just that, the choreography as a whole in this movie is amazing in itself. And I was very pleased with Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen in this movie. They have such great chemistry, and that moves me to say that I am incredibly excited for the Kenobi series coming to Disney Plus. And I would also, if this is kind of on the table, maybe a live action Clone Wars series. I mean, you got Hayden Christensen, you got Ewan McGregor, and now you got Rosario Dawson, who played Ahsoka Tano. Like, that would be perfect. You have all three core characters from that show to feature a live action Clone Wars series. And I would just love to see Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen back on the screen together. That would be amazing to see. But yes, definitely ranking Revenge of the Sith at the top. And let's just talk about Order 66. What the most emotional scene in all of Star Wars. I mean, this movie, it triggers your emotions all over the place. You get angry, you get sad, and you really feel all the emotions that the prequels were kind of boiling up to. I mean, slowly and slowly, you can see the darkness from Anakin, from such an innocent kid in The Phantom Menace to a misguided, trigger-happy Jedi in Attack of the Clones who just doesn't know how to handle himself. And then this one where he's a confident Jedi who knows what's wrong, but then he's manipulated by Palpatine to turn to the dark side, and it works perfectly. That's why I think the prequels get a little bit more hate than they should. I'm not saying they're perfect by any means, but Revenge of the Sith is definitely one of the best Star Wars movies ever made, in my opinion, because of the fact they were able to connect so many dots from the previous two movies and the next three movies following in how they finish Anakin's story, and it works so well. So moving on from number 2 to my favorite Star Wars movie of all time, at number 1, coming in with a rating of 8.8 out of 10 is Return of the Jedi. And this one is easily my favorite, and it's been one of my favorites ever since I was a kid. And you see Luke become a great Jedi Master. I mean, I don't know if he's recognized as a master, but since he's the last Jedi remaining with Yoda passing on, but when he throws away his lightsaber and he helps turn Vader away from the dark side and go over to the light side of the Force. And we finally get to see a true moment from Anakin Skywalker in the original series. It's just so satisfying. And Luke's decision to, you know what, I trust that my father is going to save me, and I trust and I refuse to turn to the dark side. I will not strike him down. And that's when you see that Vader realizes that Palpatine is really only using him for his power, and once a younger guy comes along, he is just going to get replaced, and Palpatine is going to move on to the next person that he's going to manipulate. And more importantly, he realizes this is his son, and Anakin Skywalker finally makes that appearance and saves his son from death and sacrifices himself and saves Luke's life. And that's such an amazing character ending that is so great to watch, and I loved watching it. And when he throws the Emperor into the shaft, that's when Anakin Skywalker has returned. I mean, Anakin Skywalker really turned right when he lifted up the Emperor, but he really became a Jedi again once he threw him down that shaft. Another thing that I really liked from this movie was the way that Obi-Wan explained to Luke why he didn't tell Luke about his father, and why he kind of told him from a certain point of view, what I told you was true, that my mentor Anakin Skywalker was your father, but Darth Vader killed him. He killed the guy that was known as Anakin, and he became Darth Vader. And that makes complete sense, especially after you watch Revenge of the Sith. Those two pieces really fit together. And when I watched all of these movies in a row, and when I watched A New Hope after Revenge of the Sith, he explains that, and it makes complete sense. It flows perfectly. So that's definitely a bonus to episode 4 and 3, but the way he explains it in Return of the Jedi, it just fits so perfectly. And let's move on to also talking about that whole scene on Tatooine where they're rescuing Han, and where Luke is just demolishing Jabba's forces, and it's just so fun to watch. I mean, you can tell he's definitely gotten better compared to in Empire Strikes Back, to the Jedi that he is now in Return of the Jedi, and he's just fully grown with the Force. And I don't know how he gets trained. I would love to see some sort of story, I guess, about where he got all his power and how he was able to bring more balance to himself with the Force, and how he was able to better his abilities to become a better lightsaber wielder. So, and the fact that Luke and Leia are siblings as well was also a fun twist. I mean, the great thing about the original trilogy is they throw in twists at you that just, they fit, they make sense, and they're fun twists. You don't expect them, but they make sense. So a lot of people complained also about the Ewoks, but I thought they were a great addition for the movie. Like, you see a lot of things that are thrown into movies now as like cutesy kind of things, and they don't add anything. In Return of the Jedi, there were literally an army that helped the rebellion beat the Empire. And it was amazing that they weren't just a background character used for cuteness. Like, were they cute? Yeah, pretty cute. But they were also deadly. Like, you see at the end, they're banging on heads of stormtroopers' helmets. Like, that was insane. But I can watch this movie over and over, and the satisfying ending when they put Hayden Christensen in at the end with Obi-Wan and Yoda, that was so cool. And you see them looking at Luke, and it's a great ending to the original 6 trilogy. And here are just my final thoughts. The sequels were a disappointment. While I loved The Rise of Skywalker, and that was my favorite one of the sequel trilogy, it just didn't live up to the original 6 movies. And whenever I watch the Skywalker Saga, it just fits so much better without the 3. I mean, I think the Skywalker Saga really truly ends when Anakin Skywalker saves Luke, and he goes in with the Force, and he becomes one with the Jedi, not the Sith. So that's what I really like to see. And there certainly are stories that Disney has the right to go down. I mean, I would love them to answer some of the questions and bring back some characters. Hayden Christensen, Ewan McGregor, I mean, Rosario Dawson, we saw that she's now Ahsoka Tano from the Clone Wars animated series, and there's so many areas they could go. They've already created Rogue One. They explained how they got the plans for the Death Star before A New Hope, and they explained a little bit of Han's backstory. I really like those movies. I just didn't feel the need for them in this episode. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for listening. If you want to follow this show on Spotify, feel free to do so, but you can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts as well. But thank you guys for listening. May the Force be with you. It felt needed to end the show with that, and I will see you guys next week. Bye!